You describe the flickering torchlight, the creaking floorboards, and then they ask, wait, where are we again? So why does this happen? You thought you painted a vivid scene, but somehow your players missed the most important part. Here's the thing. A great description in a role-playing game isn't about writing a novel out loud, and it's not about beautiful language or perfect metaphors or sounding like Tolkien. It's about getting the right image into your players' minds very clearly, quickly, and emotionally. I'm XPLovecat, and in this video, we're gonna break down 7 tips that'll make your descriptions hit harder, land faster, and actually stick. Number 1, lead with what matters. So let's start with one of the most common pitfalls, burying the lead. So example of doing this the wrong way would be, you step into the crypt, the air is thick and damp, and there's that distinct smell, old water, mold, maybe something rotting deep in the stone. Along the walls, faded murals depict hooded figures in strange poses, chipped and worn with age. A toppled brazier lies in the corner, long cold. Beside the altar at the far end, a figure stands and the altar is covered in dust with what looks like a broken chain resting on it. The most important aspect, the person by the altar, is actually buried in this description. So players already filed the room away as empty and moody, or perhaps they've even tuned out. So my advice is to lead with the most important detail you want your players to interact with. So here's this example in a slightly different order. As soon as you step into the crypt, your eyes catch movement near the altar. A shadowy figure stands perfectly still, facing you, unmoving, half lit by the dying torchlight. They're silent, watching. The rest of the room sinks in, the damp air, the smell of mold and rot, the faded murals along the walls, the dust, and the broken chain. You're not alone in this crypt. Another way to think about this is lead with what they'd logically notice first. So the big, bold, central thing, the one you actually want them to pay attention to. If there's someone bleeding out in the middle of the room, that's the first thing that they see, not the tapestries or the candlelight. You have to assume that players are absorbing what you say in real time, so don't wait to get to the important bit. A good rule of thumb, ask yourself, if I were standing in this scene, what would jump out at me first? Another good test is to try and figure out what part of the description you would bold if this were on a page. So if that bolded part is buried halfway through, it's likely that you might want to bring that to the front instead. So you're not just describing the world, you're directing focus. You're saying, hey, this is the part that matters, and don't be afraid to highlight that part more than once as well. If you don't spotlight it, your players are likely to spotlight something else instead. Number 2 is clarity over beautiful prose. Okay, so here's a hard truth for all us GMs who love words. Beautiful writing isn't always good game mastering. Just because something sounds cool doesn't mean it plays well at the table. A lot of the time, those fancy poetic lines, the ones that would look great in a novel, end up confusing your players. They have to stop, parse what you meant, picture it, reorient themselves, and by then you've basically already moved on. So RPGs are in the moment and live. Your job is to get a clear image into your players' heads with as little friction as possible. So here's a bad example. Amber twilight reaches across the clearing like spilled wine, drenching the forest floor as nature holds its breath in silence. So here's a list of questions your players may have, because players don't always catch every word you say, and they're looking out for the most important information. So they might be wondering, wait, when is twilight again? Is there actually spilled wine on the forest floor? Are the trees live beings? Why are they holding their breath? Okay, so that might be an exaggerated example, but you get the point. There are things players will pick apart and ask questions about if it's not clear and simple. So instead, try something like, it's just before sunrise as you walk into the forest clearing. It is unusually quiet in the clearing. In fact, you don't hear any birds or even leaves in the wind. Another way to do this is to speak in bullet points. This usually works best when you have multiple directions the party could go to investigate. So this is a way to give quick, clean visual beats. Boom, boom, boom. Instead of weaving a paragraph, just drop one strong detail at a time. It's about making sure your players are imagining what you want them to and not confusing them with pretty prose. Number 3, leave space for imagination. This one's about balance. So you don't need to describe every single thing in intricate detail, because your players will fill in the gaps. That's part of what makes role-playing games so powerful, is we have imagination and we're all actively using it. So instead of trying to tell them the exact layout of the office they just walked into, the color of the walls, what the floors are made of, just focus on what's relevant. What's the important thing in the scene? What do they actually need to know? If you give them that, they'll build the rest on their own. And that's good. That's part of the fun. You're guiding attention, not painting a photorealistic picture. But, and this is a big caveat, if there's combat coming or the layout actually affects decisions, you do need to be more specific. I ran one scenario where there were 2 different entrances to a room and I didn't clearly describe that one of them was elevated. So during combat, different players had filled in the blank in different ways. Some thought they could reach it easily, some thought they were level with it, and this caused confusion and frustration as well. So one player had said, well, if I'd known that, I would have done things differently. So when it truly matters that everyone is on the same page, then you may have to give some additional details. But if it doesn't, you don't need to burn a bunch of time detailing every curtain, rug, or ceiling tile. Let the players imagine it, and they will. And they'll probably picture something even cooler than you would have said anyway, especially if you've set the tone right. Now, if you are looking for a pre-made setting that has great inspiration for setting the tone, then check out today's sponsor, Dark Forest. Welcome to a land steeped in ancient magic and crawling with evil. Dark Forest is a new campaign setting book for the Shadow Dark RPG, where animal folk strive against the ever-present forces of chaos and corruption. With more than 200 pages of content and hand-drawn art, Dark Forest delivers rich, grimdark lore and 16 brand new furred and feathered ancestries to embody at the table. Furred folk are the builders and defenders. This includes creatures like the badger, fox, otter, and my personal favorite, the hedgehog. I mean, look how awesome this ability is. It's called Defense Ball, and when you are hit by a melee attack, the attacker will take 1d6 damage. Very fun. The feathered folk are the watchers, who keep the high places and the secret knowledge. Here we have creatures like owls, hawks, and songfolk. Also included are new classes, monsters, magic items, and spells like Grove Stride, where you and your allies can vanish into the forest foliage and reappear far along its hidden path. But one of the really awesome parts of Dark Forest is it includes so much support for you to bring your campaign to life. You'll have a fully developed continent ready for adventure, tables for random encounters, NPCs, locations, and plot hooks. Dark Forest is a realm of contrasts, feasting in abbey halls, while the woods outside whisper with ancient curses. Orchards, swamps, and ruined keeps hold treasures beyond imagining, and horrors few dare to face. And yet, those who brave its paths may rise as heroes, remembered in tale and song, or vanish into silence, never to return. Back Dark Forest on Kickstarter today for the early bird discount. Link will be in the description and comments below. Thank you so much for your sponsorship. Number 4, drip, don't dump. Okay, this is a big one. When you give your players too much information all at once, 3 things usually happen. Number 1, they forget. Number 2, they get bored. And number 3, they don't know what to focus on. Which of course is a recipe for confusion and disengagement. So instead of dumping a wall of description the moment they enter a room, try drip feeding it. Just give them what they need to know right now, and then add more as they explore, ask questions, or take actions. You're not trying to paint the whole scene in one breath, you're revealing it as they interact with it. This keeps them curious, keeping them moving, and keeps the pacing tight. So here's an example. Let's say the party walks into a large, cluttered workshop. Instead of rattling off, you see a forge in the back, a pile of broken clockwork limbs, scorch marks on the wall, 3 shelves of mysterious tools, and trapdoor under a rug. You start with, instead, it's a cluttered workshop. You smell burnt oil and something chemical. Tools are scattered across the benches. Then, as they look around or poke at things, that's when you say, you notice scorch marks along the far wall. As you step closer to the bench, you spot a trapdoor hidden beneath a rug. You're still describing everything, just in response to player curiosity. It makes your world feel more reactive and helps players actually take in what's important. Number 5, good old use the senses. Okay, this one's probably the most classic GM advice on the list, but there's a reason for that. It works. Using the senses is a shortcut to immersion. It pulls players into the moment almost instantly. And here's an important thing. I'm not saying that you need to rattle off a list of all 5 senses every time you describe a room. You don't need to hit smell, taste, touch, sound, sight like a checklist. Instead, try to use 2 or 3 per scene, especially when you're setting up a new space. Think of it like seasoning, just enough to bring the scene to life. Sight is easy, that's what most people default to, but when you add just 1 or 2 more, that's when things start to feel real. So let's break them down. Sound, this is used to build tension, hint at danger, or signal activity, like you hear a quiet muttering behind the door, the wind whistles through broken shutters. Smell, this one can be one of the most powerful. The room smells like wet copper. You catch the faint scent of jasmine, way out of place down here. Touch, this helps ground the physicality of the space. The stone is damp and slick beneath your fingers. Your boots sink slightly into the soft earth. Taste, this one's rare, but great for different environments or if there's anything weird. So the air tastes like metallic, like you've been chewing on a battery. You don't need to go overboard here, just pick a couple that feel right for the mood and the moment. And a bonus reason why this is really effective is when you use multiple senses, it gives different types of players something to grab onto. So visual thinkers, tactile learners, smell and sound cues, they all light up different parts of the brain, which means more immersion faster. Number 6, let players describe too. Here's something a lot of GMs forget. You don't have to do all the describing yourself. TTRPGs are collaborative by nature, so why not let the players help build the world too? When the details aren't critical to the story or a clue, that's the perfect time to toss it to the table. You can ask things like, hey, you're from this city, what does this marketplace look like? Or what does your god's temple feel like when you step inside? This does a few things. 1, it gives you a break. 2, it engages your players in a new way. And 3, it makes them feel invested because they're creating the world with you, not just reacting to it. And when players help create something, they tend to care about it more and it sticks better as well. And if they're anything like my players, you may end up with some hilarious interactions as a result. Now, I wouldn't say do this every time. It's a tool, not a crutch, but especially if you're watching the table and people seem a little bored or disconnected, this is a great way to pull them back in. Plus, players will come up with stuff that surprises you. Weird, flavorful, funny, specific things that you never would have thought of. And those are often the moments that really come alive at the table. Number 7, don't read box text from the book. All right, this one's for the folks running published modules or pre-written adventures. Most of those come with box text. You know, the read this aloud to your players kind of thing. And I get the intent, but I highly recommend that you don't read stuff straight from the book. So when you look down and start reading, a wall goes up between you and your players. It's like flipping from game master to audiobook narrator. So you're putting a layer of disconnect between you and your players, and people are more likely to zone out. Even if the writing is decent, it usually feels pretty inorganic, and there's less eye contact, less inflection, less of you in the scene. And as a result, the description ends up feeling flat. So instead, I would recommend, if you've had time to prep, don't copy the box text, just make a few quick notes. Pull out the key facts that can't change, like there's a locked drawer in the desk or a blood stain near the door. Maybe flag a smell or a phrase that really sticks with you, and then you can paraphrase it. Put it into your own words and bring it to life. And if you're reading the text for the first time at the table, you can skim it pretty quickly, look for the most important detail, the thing that the players need to see first, and lead with that. Describing a scene isn't about being poetic. It's about helping your players see what matters. Lead with the most important stuff, use a couple senses, let them fill in the rest. And remember, emphasis on clarity goes a long way. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!